All right, ladies and gentlemen, this video is going to be for the end of our notes, specifically for Monday's all remote Zoom class. We're going to go over these notes, or at least we went over these notes in class to help us understand the end of this war. So if you get your note packets out here, pause the video because I'm going to move on here. If you don't have your notes out, but get your notes out so you can finish this information here to get into how this war ends, and also how we're able to see, get what we want in this war from the victor standpoint. And we can also answer the question: does President Wilson get everything he wants in his 14 points, or does he have to concede? And I can say concede. Does he have to give in to some things that the British and the French want? So we'll talk about this here. As we talked last weekend, Wilson wanted to make sure the war never happened again. Britain and France just wanted revenge against Germany for causing the massive amount of damage and casualties in this war. And again, Britain and France caused enough damage themselves, but they won, so they can blame on whoever they want to. That's sort of how war works. All right, so let's take a look at some of the results of the treaty here, and you can really think about the picture that you see on the screen as to it being 100%. There's some truth coming out of this. All right. So first off, the Germans in this treaty had to accept the guilt for starting this war, and they also had to accept financial responsibility, meaning they would have to pay $33 billion to the Allies during at the end of this treaty after it's signed. All right. First off, Germany did not start this war. Serbia started this war when they assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand, and Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, and Austria-Hungary got Germany involved as allies. But Germany had to accept the guilt for this war, even though they didn't start it. Probably something that's not, helpful there for the Germans to, see anything good in this treaty whatsoever. Plus, then they had to pay $33 billion. German army had to be reduced to 100,000 men. Now, a country can get by with, having a smaller army. The United States had an army of around 100,000 soldiers before they got involved in the war. So, a country can get by with things. But again, if the German army is something that people were really, proud of, this army being reduced is incredibly important. All right. Germany could no longer have an air force, and they could have no more submarines as a result of this treaty. German U-boats were going to be commandeered by the British. Instead of allowing the British to take them, the Germans actually instead scuttled or sank their own submarines to ensure that the British would not get them and U.S. technology moving forward. They didn't want to give in to the British as a result. So they couldn't have the submarines. They weren't going to allow the old enemy of Britain and France take them. So if you look at some of these, the worst one being the top one here, that the Germany had to accept the war guilt and then pay off this war. The reduced military numbers and the technologies that are available, what Germany can and cannot use. It is meant to keep them at a disadvantage to ensure that Germany does not ever create some sort of war ever again. It's ironic that was the goal of these results or these terms of the treaty. So, but the $33 billion in money that Germany had to pay was made incredibly difficult based on the territory they lost. Now, here's the land that Germany lost at this point in Austria-Hungary and all these different cultural areas. The first section I'll circle here for you is the part that they make the most money in. This is their industrial area. Like for the United States, our industrial zone is like the Midwest, Ohio, Illinois, Michigan. That's our industrial area, Pennsylvania. If you took that away from like the United States and let's say gave it to Canada, it would cause a major amount of economic turmoil in the country because they don't have the industrial capacity to make money. This happens the same way for Germany. Germany owes the France and Britain $33 billion as a result of this war from the treaty. By taking away these industrial parts of Germany, that section she sees jutted out and giving it to France, Germany can no longer make the money needed to pay off Britain and France. So not only do they have to pay an absurd amount of money, they don't have the economic means to make that money to pay it off. So Germany, as a result of this, is economically crippled throughout the 1920s and into the 1930s, all right, because of the post-war being the situation here. Obviously, this is part of East Prussia, which is a part of Germany. Germany actually extended all the way up to the sea and up to Latvia here, all right? But we have the idea of the Poland becoming a country and getting access to the oceans here, all right? And that's exactly what we see here in this particular map of the changes. Poland is a country, again, it didn't exist in prior to World War I starting. We have Czechoslovakia. This is all former Austria-Hungary here. Austria-Hungary becoming their own countries, parts of Romania, parts of what's now Yugoslavia, which is a new country as well that's created. A lot of these different cultural areas here, these pretty much, which were formerly Austria-Hungary as an empire in Europe, that's now broken up. All right, so Germany loses territory. Austria-Hungary has to, again, this is part of the 14 points, that all of these cultural ethnic groups are allowed to create their own self-determination, to create their own governments. And that's exactly what happens here in Europe. So this is the territory. This is the most important part here. Not only is it this, but they also, this Poland getting land, and also East Prussia, which is a part of Russia. At this point, this is exactly what Germany really gets hurt by. The idea that they lose this northern territory, this connection to Russia, but also they lose this main industrial zone here. This is where the Rhine River goes through Western Germany. And this is the big economic waterway that exists in Germany to get their materials that are built in this section of Germany north and up to the ocean. That's exactly what that river is used for. All right, so very, very big territorial losses by Germany here in this war. So again, blame, lack of military, and they also begin to lose land as a result of this. So this treaty is signed, it is agreed upon, it is actually agreed upon by the Allies, and Germany had no say in actually the terms of the treaty. They were just kept out of the room, and then when they came in, once the treaty was ready to be signed, they were pretty much forced at gunpoint to sign it. Now, if they didn't sign it, then they'd find somebody who'd be willing to. But Germany was essentially forced to sign this, which is a huge hit on their pride. It's a huge hit on their ability to, say that they have some sort of self-determination after this is over. Again, this is not what Wilson wanted. Wilson did not want all these punishments towards Germany. He just wanted to be able to build a world that could be free from war and could be, used to create a world that can be made safe for peace, made safe for democracy. Obviously, as a result of the amount of punishment that Germany is getting here, it is no wonder why we go back and we take a look at this picture here, that out of the Versailles Treaty comes Adolf Hitler, an Austrian who sees this treaty as a sham, as a complete and total humiliation for the German people. And Hitler uses that message to nationalize Germany, to create what's called the Nazi, not create, but to join what's called the Nazi Party and turn that party into something that is going to take over Germany in the 1930s. All right, so it's this treaty that allows the people to be upset, to be mad, to be angry, and to create a movement in Germany to change the country of Germany, but also change the world forever in the Second World War. But we'll get to that part moving down the road here. All right, let me get through these here. But this treaty is signed. Wilson, coming back from Europe, he's seen as a hero for allowing the Americans to get involved in the war, to end the war in favor of the Allies. He signs the treaty reluctantly, but he does get his 1 point. He gets his League of Nations. The League of Nations is allowed to occur, but the problem is, according to the Constitution, the president can sign agreements abroad, make agreements with different countries, become alliances, and sign treaties. The president's allowed to do that. However, once the treaty comes back home, it is up to the Senate to turn it into a law that the United States will actually follow. All right? Opposition is hit right on the head by Senator Henry Cabot Lodge, who was one of the Republicans at the time. He is somebody who sees this treaty and sees the League of Nations as a whole nother opportunity for the United States to get involved in the affairs of Europe and for Europe to get involved in the affairs of the United States. He wanted to make sure the Monroe Doctrine, the belief that the Founding Fathers wanted to keep Europe separate from the United States, he saw this as a violation of that doctrine. All right? And he would not budge to allow this treaty to take over the American policy when it comes to Europe. Plus, many Americans, just like Henry Cabot Lodge, did not want to be dragged into another war. All right, so this is a big deal for Henry Cabot Lodge and what he wants to see done from a standpoint of creating a world that can be made safe for peace and made safe for democracy. The problem is the United States has a very isolationist attitude. They had it prior to the war, and they wanted to maintain that attitude after the war was over. So this treaty kind of stands in the way of everything that America stood for in the past. Wilson sees a possible future where America can lead the world. Many people did not want that. They wanted to keep America isolated from the rest of the world. All right. However, Wilson, seeing opposition in the Senate, says, you know what? If I can't budge these politicians, maybe I can budge the employers of these politicians, their voters. So he tries to gather public support with a speaking tour. He crisscrosses the country. He goes in trains. He speaks on the backs of the trains in front of huge crowds of people to try to encourage them to use the democratic process to make his treaty popular. Because to gather public support with a speaking tour, this is important in a democracy because if you can sway the voters can write to their politicians telling them what they want to see done, and the politicians almost have to listen to them if enough people write to them. So this is a big deal when it comes down to why it's important in democracy. Wilson changes public opinion about this treaty, changes public support. He can actually get the Senate to go along with him, because if the senators want to get reelected, they better listen to the people. And that's something that we see in a democracy, specifically a representative democracy, where people vote on their representation in government. All right. However, the problem is, on this tour, he's in Pueblo, Colorado, where Woodrow Wilson suffers a major stroke. This stroke completely debilitates him. He is incredibly inflexible while he's isolated in the White House, and he is not able to pretty much be president from a daily operations to a decision-making standpoint. He doesn't want people to know about his stroke. He doesn't want people to know about his handicaps as a result of him. I mean, if you don't know how strokes work, strokes really debilitate your ability to move one side of your body. Sometimes it might affect your speech, might affect your comprehension of words. But he's really debilitated as a result of this. But he still knows about what his goals are about trying to get this treaty signed. In fact, the interesting part about this is that Edith Wilson becomes, a non-directed elected president at this point. She's like the first woman president, because as her husband is suffering from this stroke and trying to rehab from this stroke, she is very protective. So she does not let people into the White House to see him. So she has to relay messages from the president to the Senate, and then from the Senate back to the president. She's like the messenger trying to debate with the Senate and with President Wilson to have this treaty passed, to try to come to compromises. The problem with this is that Wilson, ultimately fails because he is very inflexible while he's isolated in this White House. And as a result, the treaty and the League of Nations ultimately failed in the United States. Now, that's just the U.S. The League of Nations continued in Europe. But the United States was not a member because the U.S. Senate did not agree to the terms of that treaty to make it U.S. law. So the United States, again, they didn't start a war. They didn't start anything as a result of not signing this treaty. But the terms of the treaty is something the United States would not accept. And as a result, this league, which is Wilson's baby, it's like his pride and joy, essentially. He really wanted this passed. He really wanted the United States to be a part of this. The U.S. Senate does not agree to it, and the United States is no longer a member. The United States was the idea behind it, and the fact that we didn't join in once this league is started, it really hurts the League of Nations' power moving forward in terms of its ability to police the world. Not to tell them what to do, but to deliberate, debate, to come through different decisions that need to be made in regards to disputes between different countries. All right, so these are the last of the notes I have for you here. If there's anything I'm missing in this screencast, please let me know. Send me an email and I can get your information filled out for you, all right? But this treaty has ultimately failed. The United States, while they helped win the war, they do not support the terms of the Treaty of Versailles as a result. And maybe it's the lack of the United States that we're not in this treaty, we're not in the League of Nations, we're not there to become a powerful voice against tyranny, against dictatorships. Maybe that's what allows Hitler to come to power. And that's something we will focus on when we get to World War II. All right, that's all the notes I have here. Please make sure you finish these. And also, what you will see up right now on Canvas is the study guide for your test. Please get that open. Get that open on your assignments. It's a Google Doc, and start working on that to come to a conclusion for not only your essays, but also to find the answers for the multiple choice questions. All right, this is it for World War I. The rest of the time that we will have in class, I'll show you videos and look at different ideas and articles about how this war was fought. We'll look at some of these moving forward, but this is all the new information in the notes that you're going to get. All right, have a great day and enjoy.